Well, welcome to the Sales Scholars, where we talk to academic experts about anything and everything sales related. Well, we're excited this week to welcome our guest, Dr. Robert Petersen, who's the Dean's Distinguished Professor of Sales out of Northern Illinois University. Now, Rob, as he's affectionately known, was a salesperson for a number of years prior to earning his doctorate, and he's been recognized for his innovations in teaching as well as significant contributions in sales research. Rob served on the board of the National Conference in Sales Management, and he's been the editor of the Journal of Selling. He's published more than 100 papers, presentations, and manuscripts, and today we get a chance to talk to him about current and relevant sales-related topics. Hey, well, Rob, welcome to the Sales Scholars episode, man. We're excited that you've decided to join us today.
My pleasure. We can talk about sales. That's a great day every day.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even during the summer too, we get to talk about it, which is a ton of fun.
Well, now I get to wear a casual shirt as opposed to a suit and tie.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, you know what? Tell me maybe just for starters a little bit about the work you do at Northern Illinois and kind of how you got into this academic world.
Well, good question. I was in sales when I started my career. I was outside sales, selling forms, business forms and whatnot. Then I moved to inside sales, selling stock market data. I worked 100% commission on that. The other one was a commission against draw. So, I was always humping, always moving, always, searching the deals, trying to be of value to the customers. And I found myself, believe it or not, in Japan. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing? What do I want to do next? How's this going to work? And I wound up saying, okay, I had a lot of family in academia, teachers, and I decided to get the PhD. And so, I went to the University of Memphis, which was at that time the only place that was doing sales research for a PhD. So that's where I went. I came out and I've gotten to teach sales related classes for the last 20 years and love it.
How was the transition from, hey, I'm working doing this thing to now I'm studying and doing research on this topic?
What a sales rep does each day is very similar to what a teacher does. You've got to listen, you've got to figure out, what you're going to pitch them with, what would be useful, what are the solutions, et cetera. So I found the sales skills in sales, or the sales skills in sales, very analogous to teaching skills. But I will tell you this, my first job was the University of Portland. I'm driving there first month or two. And I'm like, I don't have a quota. I was like, this is just kind of weird. Because again, I worked 100% commission and we were every month, here's your number. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. I don't have this number just crushing over my head. So it was, but I think anybody probably listening to this is one of those people who want to get things done. So 1, 2, 3, I took what is considered, a cushy job with your pipe and your elbow patches and just turned it into this all out, a brawl for the hearts and minds of the future sales reps that have to be in my class. I am always, testing the wire, trying this, doing that. I think that's like any good sales rep or any good sales manager or sales leader. Everybody, certainly sales professor, we're all trying to figure out what's the next best thing that we need to be teaching, doing, or learning.
Yeah. Isn't that, I've found that to be true myself in the classroom that, don't have a quota anymore, but if you've been in the space, you're still motivated to do like you said. So no, that's great, man. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the topics I know you've spent some time on, in fact, I think you and Howard Dover wrote a paper on this, but is this topic of sales enablement. And being newer in the academic space, as I have looked at this topic and looked at how to define it, it's all over the boards at times. So I thought it might be a good conversation just to kind of talk about the relevance of sales enablement, kind of what it means and what companies need to be thinking about on that topic today.
Thank you for that, because that's just teased me up, because Howard Dover and I did write a paper on just all the different definitions of what sales enablement is. And some are more training focused, some are more ops ops focused, some are more marketing focused. So we took a look at all of those, and we offered one of ourselves. But basically, is how are you combining all these resources that exist across the company and have been for 100 years, and try to start reducing the silos? Because hey, age old, does sales and marketing get along? Do they talk to each other, or are they kind of doing this? Well, wait a minute, you need to add in training. And oh wait, even before you add in learning and development and ongoing, what about this onboarding? Let's make that formalized. And oh, don't forget about KPIs and what are the metrics that we're going to use in order to evaluate it, and certainly not content management. Um, yeah, there's so many things that are going on, and then all they report up through these silos, and it's not been functional. And so there's finally been a movement in the last 10 years to say, okay, and some companies have been doing it well for 10 years, and some are just brand new to this thing called sales enablement. But the whole goal is to make your sales conduit, your sales channel, um, more effective and efficient for the customer's journey that the customer is on. So how do we combine? And it sounds simple. It's like, well, yeah, all those things are going to talk to each other. Maybe a COO has responsibility for all those and trying to get all those parts to better monitor. But the sales enablement director, holy cow, it's like a Superman or a Wonder Woman trying to get these silos who traditionally don't want to talk and get them, working together better for the sales rep. So now that all sounds maybe a little too cushy. You want an example?
Yeah, no, that'd be great because I just from my own experience of alignment, sales and marketing in particular, it's like most often people agree on the concept, but then everybody
Yes.
kind of goes back and does their day job, and
Yes.
and they do their things, and then alignment becomes difficult. So yeah, I think an example would be great just to help people on how to be thinking about this.
So, and you're right. Once you get done with your conversation, if your job description and the KPIs of the sales manager, the marketing manager, or the trainer or whatnot, if their KPIs, their evaluations are all different, and their goals to the company are different. So unless these people work together, you're just going to butt heads. And you're right. It sounds simple in theory. And I also wrote another paper on sales and marketing alignment. If they were aligned, oh my gosh, all these lagging indicators about, closing ratios, the speed of the close, I mean, all were positive. So it's like, can we do this better? But let me give you an example of what sales enablement, if you're creating a sales enablement function, just like any other function that you need, support from the C-suite, but you need some early wins. You need a political win. You need buy-in from the sales force and the sales manager. So what I found is the uh, content management systems, or I'll give you an example. This one company had 3,000 collateral SKUs, so they had 3,000 pieces of, I don't know, infographics, white papers, webinars, all this stuff. They said, let's clean house, and they cleaned to 300. 90% of their stuff they just threw out
Wow.
for a couple of reasons. Yeah, isn't that crazy? That is
Yeah,
just
they had to
um,
give someone heartburn.
well, these marketers were creating content in a vacuum. So they would put out this stuff that the sales force never used. That's one. I mean, so you're paying somebody to create stuff that no one ever, that's insane. The next part, though, was, well, what are the gems? Because it's not all, these marketing folks are not insane people. They do know what's going on, but it's a matter of, the sales rep might have found his or her favorite thing that they use, and whether it fits perfectly or not, that's what I'm going to use because that's my go-to.
Yeah.
Um, and they says, well, let's get rid of the stuff that people, let's showcase the things that people use a lot, get rid of the stuff that people don't use, and then have sales and marketing, or the marketing collateral folks work better with some sales team, sales management, a couple of sales reps in order to create the stuff, and then I'll let them find it more easily. And that's where a content management system might come in. It might be separate. It might lay into your CRM system or whatnot. But um, that win going from clutter like this down to something that's more usable is generally and often a first sales. If you've never had a team sales enablement function, that's normally one of the great wins that people can say, like, oh my God, this is so much better. I can find stuff. It's more germane to what I'm needing for the client, etc.
Okay. No, I mean, that's a great example of what like an output
Yeah,
of some good sales enablement looks like. I'm curious, in some of the research that you've done or work you've done with companies, have you come across any kind of common barriers to kind of implementing a sales enablement strategy inside an organization?
sure. Sure. I mean, some of the standards, like I mentioned, is that senior level buy-in. They have to get behind. It can't be a
Yeah.
window dressing. Just like kind of like training, where the sales manager sends all the people to be trained, and then he or she doesn't attend it himself, so they really don't know exactly what's going on. They made the decision to say yes. So it's the same thing with sales enablement. If the senior management leadership is not behind it, it's going to go. It's going to go nowhere. Um, budgets are always an issue. Um, I've seen it. People have a X budget, 100,000, 500,000 to it, and I've also seen places that have no budget. Anytime sales enablement wants to get something done, they have to go ask for money. A or B, convince training, marketing, sales that what we plan to do would be of value to you and your team, and this is how it's going to make the downstream product even better. And so let's use some of your money.
Okay.
And that one blew me away. I was like, oh, come on. And it was done many times when I was doing my interviews on this topic. I was like, wow, this is a wild management tool. Um, Again, it just depends on the flavor of what sales enablement is, and I'll leave you with this analogy because everybody, and you mentioned, like, what is this? And everybody's touching different parts of the elephant. If you ask the Fortune 500, how many comp plans do you have? I mean, if we had a Fortune 500, how many comp plans would there be? 500 for sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody had, well, chargebacks are this and that, but we only give the first 30 days a month. And that's kind of the similar thing. But yet, everybody gets paid. There is a comp plan. It's a little bit similar to sales enablement. Everybody has a little bit different flavor. And if sales enablement germinated through operations, which tends to be a little bit older or one of the older functions in the firm, it's going to have definitely a different flavor and feel versus if it came from training. Um, because you know what, we don't have an onboarding. The CEO says we need an onboarding program. Everybody else is doing onboarding. This is 5, 10, or maybe now 5, 10 years ago. We need this. So if it became a sales enablement function that looked across different silos, all of a sudden your sales enablement flavor would have more of a training component. And we see that, and that's the article that Howard Dover and I wrote in the journal
Okay.
Something. It looks at that last column that we did. It's like, hey, what's the flavor of this definition?
It's good because my simplest definition has always been that sales enablement is about the collaborative and collective effort of multiple functions, all
Yeah,
in and around this idea of driving sales.
right.
Because organizations, so many of them look different in terms of kind of their construct.
Yes.
That well, who should be part of it? Who should lead it? So I think this as a topic, I know it's a hot topic. Technology folks seem to do it certainly better than non-tech folks.
Yes. Yeah.
What have you seen any particular industries that you felt like yourself kind of have accelerated well in this?
Without a doubt, SaaS has been kind of where it got its most of its oomph. Um, but I mean, size doesn't matter, industry doesn't matter now. Sales enablement is not a enablement platform. Then all of a sudden, like, woo, we've got it.
Yeah.
Technology is absolutely an important part of it, and your data generally comes from CRM. I was talking to this other company, and he said I had to do all this, and I could not make one more KPI. I could not request or when we run the system, when we run reports, we couldn't start asking the entire sales. This is a multinational company. We could not start asking the sales reps to import more and more data so we could run the reports that we wanted. So I had to figure out how to carve out that we could certainly have the pulse on what's going on without creating more angst for our field team. And to the point where if it's working well, everybody wants something for the sales from either for the sales rep or from the sales rep, some of the sales force. And now there's a protocol at some of the larger companies. You can't talk to the sales force unless you go through our internal checklist and be approved. You can't just start sending out, hey, would you guys mind filling this out? Hey, can you all do this? And I would love it if you would just do it. It's only going to take 10 minutes of this training program. Can you? Then you're just sucking in all the energy that your sales team has when they should be talking to customers,
Yeah.
and you're having them do stuff. And so, I mean, everybody watching this knows what that's like. I mean, I was in sales, another corporate directive. It's like, especially coming from sales enablement, it's like, forget it, man. You're
Yeah.
bothering me. You're not helping me. And I think that's where CRM was 20 years ago. Make sure if you're going to add these things for us to do, it better help me do my job better. And sales enablement, having learned that from CRM, sales enablement comes at it with a crisper understanding. It's like, okay, don't bother these people unless it's going to improve their efficiency or effectiveness with the people who have the money.
Yeah. I like that as kind of a, if an organization or somebody's going to pursue kind of elevating sales enablement inside the organization or even introducing it, but that as kind of a principle on effectiveness and
Yeah,
efficiency, because I have watched organizations, I've been associated with them, but even today, you look at the research around non-selling time
yeah,
salespeople are experiencing. And yeah, it's like it seems like the more tech process tools and processes introduced, sometimes it's like, yeah, look, this is great, but I'm doing everything but getting in front of my customers.
and that's what without giving names, there was a company that hired a sales enablement director, and that person came in and they wanted to win, so they were giving all these sales reps additional stuff to do, and it's like, and the pushback was vehement. I mean, us as a sales force, our culture. Again, we're
Yeah,
recording, so we'll keep
that's
it
not
clean. But
a
it's
I'll
like,
say it is, that's not a win.
I'm like, fight me. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Especially like the first one, anybody knew, it's like, oh, fine, I'll help you out. But after a while, it's like, you're adding to my clerical woes, not helping me be more effective or more efficient with our customer. And again, to me, what we're doing is we're empowering the channel, the sales force. But really, the end goal is you need to empower the customer and watch the customer journey, hit them where they need to be hit with support, with questions, with examples, with whatever. And so they make a more informed decision. And that's your end goal. How you get it there is being more effective and efficient with your sales force. But again, the whole goal would be to make sure that your customer is the one who's empowered. They feel knowledgeable. They understand how to make a good and fast decision. And a lot of that is not sales rep mediated. A lot of
Yeah.
that is they want stuff that's, you know, in the cloud, that so they can go and ask for it. I mean, we could talk forever, but sales enablement down to the point where another company was, they do a lot of quotes. It was, they help manufacture buildings. Okay, so there's a lot of different moving parts, and so the sales enablement team put together a checklist on how we can take a 2-hour quote and make it less than that. And so they did. They shaved off 20% of the time it took to create a quote using technology. And so if you took that, in which they took that over several thousand reps that they had worldwide, there's your ROI, easy to calculate about the amount of time that they got back. So that was again, there's so many examples. And again, for a sales rep, if you're going to cut my time that it takes me to create a proposal by 20%, I'm going to love it.
I know when you and I had our first call to prepare for the podcast, we got into this conversation about improv and sales, and I was fascinated by it. as you were telling some of your stories about, using improv with your students and some of the similarities with improv. So maybe, just share a little bit of those similarities between sales and improv and how you've seen it impact, but people you've worked with.
Craig, this morning you got up. Did anybody hand you a script for the day?
Yeah, I did not get a script.
You did not get a script.
Life is improv, I guess I can conclude.
Exactly. You're on it. Life is improv, and so um, I use it in my classes because, and the students think I'm nuts to start. Well, maybe still, I don't know. But they're like, what is this? This has nothing to do with sales. I get a lot of pushback from some spirited students, and I don't mind that. I was a spirited spirit back in the day too. Until we get to the point where we're on the phones making cold calls in this particular class, and then it's like, oh, that's what this really means. Even though I've told them what it means, I've connected it, and I say improv, and I got to hang out and study down at Second City in Chicago, which is the improv guru of the world.
Yeah.
To me, sales and improv, again, I thought teaching and sales went hand in hand, and improv and sales and comedy. But I also have to teach people improv is not comedy. It's just extemporaneous, spontaneous. If you get a laugh and that's the purpose, that's great. But for our classroom purposes, we do laugh. But a lot of times it's just like, think on your feet. And I come up with 3 things that I tell them. What makes for good sales and good comedy? You would go to a comedy club and you'd pay money to go in, is that you're listening, you're adapting, and you're collaborating. Listen, adapt, collaborate.
Yeah.
And if you can't do those in sales, you're not going to have a career. And if you can't do that on an improv stage, then they're going to the audience is going to be bored to tears. They don't come just to listen to people argue, which sometimes is what I get with my students to start. They want to argue. I'm like, nobody wants to pay to see anybody argue. And certainly in sales, nobody wants to argue with the customer all the time or ever.
Yeah.
So listen, adapt, collaborate. And then I just do exercises to get them to understand what that's like. So if you're up for it, you ready for an improv exercise?
Sure. This
You'd have
is
choice.
on the adaptability. We didn't talk about this in advance. I'm down.
Oh, that was the other thing is for certain student audiences, I just tell them it's improv. For business audience, sometimes I call it adaptability training, and they're all good because if you say improv, they're all freaking out thinking they're on Whose Line Is It Anyway?
My heart stopped for a second. I was like, wait, for real? Okay, let's do it.
So there's a bunch of different listening exercises that I do. Some simple. If this is my arm, if this is our conversation, where do most people stop listening and they just can't wait to respond? All right. So I don't know, somewhere they're listening, and then they've already know what they're going to say. And that's horrible if you're a sales rep, you're listening to the customer and you're all ready to tell them what they need to know. And you haven't finished listening to their conversation the whole way through. So there's a couple of different ways. There's a last word, and that's probably the easiest one. So that's what we'll do. Is whatever word that I use last in my sentence, that's gonna be your first word, and whatever you use last, I'm going to use your last word. Now the challenge of this is you have to listen, obviously, but you kind of have to string together a conversation that is at least somewhat coherent.
Yeah.
It'll get more dangerous as we go. So I would say it's like, Craig, it was awesome having you invite me to the show today.
Today, I had a great time listening to some of the stories you've talked about in sales.
Sales, best thing you can do with your clothes on, according to John Fenton, which is a quote that I love.
Love is one of those things that doesn't often get spoken about in sales, but I feel like that the more you love, the better you'll be.
Being. Oh, that's the other thing is you can either use the word or an ing or ly or whatever else.
Good adaptability right there, Rob.
So that's the gist. if you want to make it a little bit hard, and again, I showed this to a sales manager. He says, "Hey, would you call in and roll it and run this at our weekly meeting?" I said, "Sure, sure." Um, but there's other ones. There's the alphabet that you and I would have a discussion, and we'd have to run through the alphabet. So your word would have to start with an A, then I'm B, then you're C, and then trying to make sure the conversation holds together is hard, especially even if you're a native English speaker. You'll see it's like R R, and you'll start people running through the alphabet.
Yeah.
So, and again, students, I make them do that. For corporate people, I sometimes flip on the overhead or flip on the PowerPoint slide that has the alphabet already up there, so they know. So, and
That's
I
so
mean, I
funny how you adopt for the corporate people a little bit more than what you do with the students. It's adults, man. They get all panicky when it's time to do anything new.
But plus I mean, although the students pay tuition, the corporate folks are paying. They don't want to have a bad experience or an experience that makes them feel bad or look bad. They all want to feel good. But
Yeah.
again, doing this improv, there is nothing but laughter and just kind of one of those like, oh, I should have said. I mean, how many times oh, I should have said this.
Yeah.
But it's always easier when you're in what I call the cheap seats and you're watching these other people perform because your head is clear. Well, guess what? That's what I want to train these students and these young sales reps to be at the free throw line when everybody's yelling and screaming and you're just going like that. To be in those sales call when it's starting to go sideways or your buyer is saying this thing and all of a sudden this unknown influencer just comes in and starts trashing your party and how to listen, collaborate, and adapt to what's going on. And so improv. The students actually look after a while. They absolutely look forward to it because I do things with voicemails. I do things that are a little edgy, a little fun, and then I slowly work them up into, it's really a role play.
Yeah.
But we start with something that's, I mean, a voicemail. It's like, leave your breakup voicemail, 30 seconds, go. And the breakup voicemails are hilarious because we'll do a debrief. Oh, it's not you, it's me, and stuff like that.
The common lines. I bet 30 seconds feels like a long time too for some people.
Yeah, but then I give them another one, and then I transition to what the root of the day is, which is we're going to talk about voice message, the art of a voice message, how long it's got to be, what are the 4 parts that you got to put in there, and they're like, and I said, okay, when we were doing this with Second City, okay, let's say you're a sales rep for Second City calling to set an appointment with a corporate compliance officer. You've got their voicemail, you have 30 seconds. So in theory, they should have been prepping for today's classroom. In reality, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
So that's the 3rd or 4th one that I do. And they're like, yeah, let's do another one, Dr. P. And then I hit them with that. And they're like, oh, damn. And so they crash and burn. And that's when I says, okay, how'd that feel? And they, these are educated people about to get degrees, and they feel like trash. I said, good. Now do I have your attention? Now let's go learn how you do the art of a voicemail.
Well, that's awesome, Rob. On that note, we're going to kind of wrap up this episode, but I can't thank you enough for joining the Sales Scholars today and sharing some of your experience, some of your knowledge, and really just helping us understand more of this world of selling.
Oh, anytime, Emma, anytime anybody gets to talk about sales and gets invited to talk about the topic, that's a great day. It's a great day. I appreciate the opportunity with you, Craig, and then with the University of Houston.
Oh, man, our pleasure.